Hello and welcome back. If you're just now joining us for part 2 of Kentucky's alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment Combined Overview Attainment Task Training, I'm Jason Howard with the Office of Assessment Accountability's Division of Assessment Accountability Support. This part of the training will focus primarily on information related to the administration protocol of the attainment task. As a reminder, if you have not done so, please open or print the administration guide located on the Kentucky Department of Education website, Assessments and Accountability, Assessment, Alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment, Alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment Resources. Also, there are live links in this training. However, in order to access the links from this training, you must view the PowerPoint in slideshow view. Completing this training should prepare each participant to accurately administer the attainment task. Correct administration is crucial to getting accurate information from the assessment. Therefore, it is important to take time to fully understand the administration procedures. So, the attainment tasks are intended to assess students in the content areas that all students are tested on as part of the general assessment. But not all content areas are required by the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. This is a requirement of IDEA, which requires students with disabilities to participate in every district or statewide assessment. But it also allows alternate testing methods for students with significant disabilities. An attainment task, or often referred to as an AT, is a one-on-one assessment that requires a student to answer questions read by the teacher or test administrator. The ATs are in multiple choice format, with each AT consisting of a set of 5 questions or items, all of which are based on an authentic task. The teacher or test administrator will sit with the student, ask the questions, watch for the student responses, and record the student response. The attainment tasks are considered secure testing materials. This means that they cannot be used for instruction, shared with anyone not authorized, and must be kept in a secure location while not in use. The alternate assessment materials should be treated like the general education testing materials. Materials must be returned to the appropriate district administrator for secure destruction. Some content areas may even include supplemental materials that need to be downloaded and/or materials that are provided for hands-on use during the assessment. All supplemental materials, with the exception of the USB drives, which will be returned to the DAC to return to UK, must be destroyed upon completion. Teachers will complete both the alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment Overview and AT training modules and pass the online qualification quiz prior to receiving or administering the attainment task. Teachers will need to print a copy of the quiz, the certificate for the DAC, BAC, or DOS, or the district alternate assessment administrator to store in a secure location selected by the district. The AT Resource Guide provides additional information to help clarify testing protocols and facilitate instruction, including adaptations and modifications, specific content items, information about orienting students to the materials, a picture glossary of terms for each content area. Once the resource guide is posted, it may be used all year for instructional purposes. Districts may request supplemental materials for students who have been identified with a visual impairment on their IEPs. Keep in mind that not all materials or grade ranges will have supplemental materials that can be made in tactile graphics. Requests for materials should be submitted by the DAC to myself, Jason Howard, at jason.howard@education.ko.gov, no later than September 15th, 2021. Copies of attainment tasks can be made in order to provide to another alternate assessment teacher in the school, or to cut pictures apart for administration without damaging the original. If any school level materials are missing or damaged, this should be communicated immediately to the DAC or district alternate assessment administrator. Additional materials, copies, may be used from the district binder provided to each DAC. Each school with students participating in the alternate assessment will receive one attainment task testing binder for the grades represented in the school. Once the online quiz has been completed and prior to the administration, materials may be reviewed. Materials will be shipped the week of October 25th for Window 1 and will be received no later than November 1st. The task administration for Window 1 begins November 15th, 2021. The Attainment Task Administration for Window 1 closes on December 20th, 2021. The Student Registration Database, or the SRD, will be open for Window 1 AT and TAR score entry beginning November 15th and will close for Window 1 AT entry only on December 22nd, 2021. It is important to provide the appropriate accommodations. The AT Administration Guide provides a list of acceptable accommodations taken from the accommodation guidelines for students with IEPs that are taking the general assessment. Refer to the Inclusion of Special Populations document located on KD's website for additional information on allowable accommodations. If the test administrator has questions or concerns about specific accommodations, contact Jason Howard in the Division of Assessment and Accountability and Support. This slide provides a list of possible accommodations used in instruction and how they can be used for the ATs. I'm going to read over them and possibly explain a little more about each. So first, if the student uses an eye gaze board where pictures or words are placed on a board and the student looks at his or her selected answer for the instruction, then it is fine to cut apart the picture choices and put them on a board as long as the same order or sequence is maintained. Second, if a student doesn't use pictures, then it's fine to present or read the answer choices without the pictures unless the picture responses options are a necessary component to answering the question. Next, some students require verbal directions to start, continue, and complete a task. If this is provided during instruction, it is okay to do so during AT administration. This might be something like look at the choices, which one is the correct answer, point to the answer, etc. Large print copies are acceptable. Remember that test administrator is always reading the answer choices, so the student doesn't need to be able to read the words. Some students must be oriented to the materials. If this is done during instruction, it is okay to do so during the assessment. For example, the test administrator may take the student's hand and place it on each answer and state, this is your car, this is your wagon, this is the airplane. Then pull the student's hand back and ask the student to select the answer. Physical support is okay if it is not physically guiding the student to an answer. Acceptable physical support would be something like supporting the student's elbow or forearm so that he or she can move laterally, or supporting the student's head so he or she can see the eye gaze board. So some examples of accommodations, we'll continue on here. This is another example of an accommodation that is acceptable based on what the student uses for instruction. So some students who use symbols may have symbols with the same meaning. In that case, the symbol can be exchanged. However, if you change one picture, you must change all response options for that question. Pictures should be similar in format, and the correct picture response option should not be stylistically different from the others, i.e. the only picture in color or the only picture that is a photograph. Again, response options must be presented in the same order or sequence as they were presented in the original attainment task. It is very helpful to read through the attainment task and all items prior to administration. This will ensure fluency while reading the task, which in turn helps with the student comprehension. If unsure about a pronunciation, check with someone prior to the administration. Some tasks have accompanying supplemental materials such as maps, graphs, or stories. These materials will be listed on the first page of the task and will be located at the end of the task. These items may be removed prior to the start of the task and presented to the student when needed. Some tasks may require a download for video clips that accompany the assessment. These will also be provided on a USB found in the supplemental materials envelope. Words in the question that are bolded and underlined should be emphasized to the student. Examples: not, most, likely, best. All questions have been provided for the student for student use at the end of the task. These questions can be cut apart, covered, or manipulated as needed. Use of the questions at the end of the task is optional. Read the script signified by quotation marks to the student exactly as written. If the task contains a closed sentence, like fill in the blank, the test administrator may read the sentence with each option. Picture and answer choices may be provided in any format as long as the order of the binder is maintained. Some examples: up and down, side to side, and the corners of the page. The sequence of A, B, and C cannot change. Remember that any change to response options must be made to all response options in a question. The task must be administered in the same content order that is provided within the binder. When starting the Attainment Task Administration, remember that it is to be administered in a one-on-one setting, although additional adults may be present to assist the student if needed. It is important not to teach any part of the task prior to administration or in between administration sessions. The 5-minute break between each 5-item task is optional and may be taken or not. However, sometimes students require a break within a 5-item set. If a student requires a break, teachers, test administrators may orient the student to where they were in the process before restarting. Teachers and test administrators should never restart an item set from the beginning. Students may only complete one content area per day. If a situation occurs and a district needs to request test more than one content area per day, please contact your district assessment coordinator to work out details with KDE. As we said earlier, pictures are considered supplemental materials. If the student responds better to words than pictures, you don't have to provide pictures to the student, unless the picture response option is required as part of the question. The attainment task is a multiple choice assessment and all response options must be presented. The text must be read aloud by the test administrator or by the student. Encouraging the student to work and reinforcing the student for working is acceptable. The student should not be allowed, or should not be provided feedback rather, on the accuracy of any response. The test administrator can provide multiple opportunities for the student to respond before assigning a no response code. If at any time the test administrator feels the student is not engaged or off task, they may reread an item based on their observation. This is only permitted for students on the alternate assessment. It is important to allow the student to show what he or she knows independently. Here is a reminder of things that is not allowed and could result in an allegation being filed. So for example, prompting correct answers in any way. Like maybe you read an answer choice and you say, and A is the correct answer. That would be considered prompting. Giving the student another try to get the correct response. So if a student gives you a clearly wrong response and you say, well, maybe you want to reevaluate that response before you make that your final answer, that would be a no-no. And recording scores based on expected responses. So if you start recording a score or circling in a bubble or circling an answer prior to the kid giving you an answer, which then prompts them to say, well, it's C, that would also be a cause for an allegation. So selecting a response. During the test administration, you should read the item to the student and also read each answer choice. If needed, orient the student to the response options prior to reading each question. So for example, read and or point to each response option prior to asking the question. Again, as we shared on slide 21, it is okay to reread the script or task question and point to each answer choice while rereading it. The test administrator must record the student's first independent response, as it's not the test administrator's role to decide if the student is guessing. Using the answer sheet, the test administrator will enter student responses into the Student Registration Database, or the SRD. A response must be recorded before moving on to the next item. If the student fails to respond, the test administrator may select the no response option. It is okay for the student to change his or her response as long as he or she does so independently. The student has not been cued in any way by the teacher, and the teacher has not moved on to the next item. Anyone who administers a state assessment, which includes the Attainment Task Administration, must complete the administration code and inclusion of special populations training prior to the assessment administration. If any classified staff or non-school personnel assist with the student during the assessment, they must sign a non-disclosure form, which must be stored in a location selected by the district. When all information has been entered in the student registration database, or the SRD, place the student's answer sheet in a secure location and give all school level testing materials to the district or building assessment coordinator, the director of special education, or the district alternate assessment administrator to be securely destroyed. Don't forget to delete any assessment files prior to placed on the computer and empty the recycling bin. The Window 1 attainment task must be administered by December 20th, 2021. Student scores must be entered in the student registration database, or the SRD, for Window 1 by December 22nd, 2021. If there are issues with technology, contact your school or district technology coordinator to make sure the issue is not local. If the issue is determined to be on the department's end, email Darrell Mattingly. For issues with timelines or task completion, have the DAC, BAC, DOS, or district alternate assessment contact me, Jason Howard, at jason.howard@education.ky.gov to discuss any situations like this. For the Window 2 administration, materials will ship the weeks of April 4th through the 8th if you select option 1, or April 11th through 15th if you select option 2. Materials will be received no later than April 11th, 2022 for Window 1 and April 18th, 2022 for Window 2. The second testing window will begin April 18th, 2022. The SRD will also open April 18th for Window 2 score entry. The second testing window will close May 27th, 2022. Remember, districts reserve the right to conclude testing before May 27th, 2022 if they choose to. The last day to enter scores in the student registration database for the SRD for the second window is June 3rd, 2022. As a reminder, the TAR and the Quality of School Climate and Safety results will be open to submit in the SRD from November 15th to June 3rd of next year, 2022. So this concludes the overview attainment task training. If you have any questions, please feel free to email Jason Howard or call the number provided on the screen. It's 502-564-4394, and my email is jason.howard@education.ky.gov. You may now proceed to the online training system, or the OTS, to complete the required quiz. Once you have accessed the online training system, you will select Access KDE Training Materials and take quizzes found under the Teacher's Tools. Once you're in the site, select Take Quiz found under the Alternate Assessment Combined Overview and Assessment Attainment Task Quiz. It will be the first assessment listed on that page. Thank you for participating today. Good luck, and I hope you have a successful administration this year.